Senator Warren. Senator Van Hollen of Maryland's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank all of you for your testimony here today. And I think there's consensus that we need to address the housing supply issue. And there may be some federal tools we can use to incentivize local jurisdictions to reduce barriers to housing supply. But I think all of us know we're not going to snap our fingers today and in the next 6 months, a year, a couple of years, create all the supply we need. So I think we should also be focused on using proven public policy tools to provide more families with affordable housing and allow families that have been trapped in poverty to move to areas of opportunity. Professor Desmond, I want to start with you because you mentioned in your written testimony a bipartisan bill that I introduced with Senator Todd Young called the Family Stability and Opportunity Vouchers Act, which would provide, families with young kids the opportunity to move to an affordable home, but also wraparound services to make transitions to other neighborhoods with higher opportunity. Could you first briefly talk about the fact that people have looked at this, the empirical evidence shows this is effective? And second, what is the impact on that program, which we're trying to expand significantly because it's been successful? What's the impact of some of the institutional investors buying up properties in some of the areas these families want to move to?
Thank you for the question, Senator. The bipartisan bill that you helped introduce and sponsor would be incredibly impactful for families in all sorts of ways. Housing is bound up with opportunity. So it's not just about how much rent you're paying, but it's also where you're living, where your kids are going to school. The promise of a housing voucher is to expand choice and opportunity for so many Americans denied it. So the empirical research on this is very clear. When families have the opportunity to move to neighborhoods with lower rates of poverty, lower rates of crime, higher rates of public safety, their lives are improved in so many different ways. Let me just give you one data point. Children who go to schools with higher levels of integration do far better than their peers who go to segregated schools, even when those segregated schools are flooded with resources. So these programs work, not to mention just giving families a breath and relief so they can pay what they should be paying for housing costs instead of driving them into poverty. The institutional investment in our markets is the opposite of this. It is the view that housing is a commodity, that it's something that should only be for profit, and it's an opportunity denier and a poverty spreader.
I appreciate that observation, which is why this trend is alarming. The other challenge we, of course, have is discrimination based on source of income, where in certain places, I think the majority of places around the country, landlords can discriminate against people with vouchers because of the source of income. Can you talk about that challenge and whether it's made even more difficult if you have an institutional investor with no connection to the neighborhood?
So source of income discrimination, as you know, is in most countries, or in most counties, there's no law against just saying no to a family just because they have a voucher. The evidence suggests that when source of income laws are put in place, they do help families get housed quicker and into better neighborhoods. There's a higher success rate with vouchers with those laws intact. With respect to institutional investors on this question, when you take the landlord and tenant relationship that Mr. Dunn so eloquently talked about today, and you put a lot of distance between folks that are working together, and you make that relationship purely financial, landlords don't have a lot of skin in the game to give tenants a break when their kid gets sick or when they have to go to the dentist appointment. So it does suggest that those landlords not only are going to react in a more kind of impersonal way, it suggests that they might build in a kind of discrimination that is beneficial to their profit motive, including source of income discrimination.
Thank you. There's a whole lot of additional territory to cover. Ms. Yandel, I just have a little bit remaining time. Could you comment briefly on the Family Stability and Opportunity Vouchers Act and why it would be important to move that forward?
Well, it would be important for all the reasons Professor Desmond said. The only thing that I would add is that the legislation, 500,000 new vouchers, targeted towards families with young children could effectively end family homelessness, and that the funds that are included for mobility counseling are especially important because that allows counselors to help these families with finding communities that are best for them and then helping them obtain and retain housing in those communities. So it's a very important bill.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.